From Isolation Studios, it's Richard Krause.
Welcome everybody to In Isolation with the talk show, where we make a connection without actually making contact. I'm Richard Krause, and I hope you're staying healthy, and I hope you're staying happy. My guest today joins me via Zoom from his home in Connecticut. Joe Pantoliano has been a working actor for over 40 years. From doing plays in empty basement theaters in New York City, to starring on Broadway, to guest roles on some of the biggest television shows of several decades, shows you might have heard of like MASH and The Sopranos, and then juicy supporting parts in films like Risky Business, The Goonies, The Fugitive, Memento, Bad Boys, and The Matrix. He says there aren't any small parts, only small paychecks. He jokes that he has a 20-minute face, perfect for character work, but his new film, From the Vine, offers him the chance to show off his 90-minute face. His first starring role in recent memory sees him playing a man who gives up a high-flying career as an executive to return to Italy, where he was born, to search for his center and regain his moral compass. In this interview, we talk about the parallels between his life and that of his latest character. We talk about Jimmy Stewart's wig and how On the Waterfront made him want to be an actor. And here's a surprise. It had nothing to do with Marlon Brando. Let's get to know Joe Pantoliano.
I don't know how to make wine.
Does anybody know how to make wine here?
Nessuno.
Okay, so we Google it.
We Google. Mo cerchiamo con Google,
I remember seeing The Music Man. My dad took me to Journal Square, New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, where all the old palaces, you know, back in the turn of the century, and talking pictures. I guess these palaces like Lowe's Paradise, and they were in every major city. So there was a Lowe's. We called it Lowe's, Lowe's Paradise. But that theater, The Music Man was what, in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember being 10 years old, and when the house lights were down, it was like stars in the ceiling, and there were like these Baroque balconies, and you felt like you were in Europe. It was really a beautiful theater. I was just taken aback by it, and I'm sure they did live performances. When I was a kid, they would do personal appearances.
Right.
So people from the movie. I remember there was a theater, the only movie theater in Hoboken, New Jersey, was the Fabian Theater, and the Fabian was showing The Three Stooges Go to Mars. and we had a local WPIX kid show host called Officer Joe Bolton. He would walk around in his cop uniform, and he would talk to it was his kind of like Access Hollywood in those days. But the Three Stooges came on stage, and they did a little bit of their act, and they talked to the kids and took questions, and that was the coolest thing in the world for me.
Yeah.
To see these guys on my mother's 19-inch black and white television in living color, because everything was black and white.
Yeah.
So we got a color television set. That wasn't until 65.
Right.
It was used. So that's that memory. And movie memories, one of the big pleasures is when we made the Goonies, because they don't make movies like that anymore. Everything was practical. It had to be built.
Right.
And at Warner Brothers, they had a stage that still is the largest water stage in the world, so it can hold water. So they did Captain Blood there. They did when they had to build towns, interior towns. That's where they would do it on that stage. And so when they Mike Reba, who's no longer with us, He was the production designer, and somehow he found the original blueprints for Captain Blood for the pirate ship, and so he built that ship. And so it was surrounded by water, and where the gangplank was, it was a cutout, so it was 16 feet drop. Everywhere else, it was like 3.5 feet. So you could get the crews that could wade through it, and everybody wore trout waders.
Yeah.
And but we would go swimming during lunch, and because the Goonies had to be complete, we were shooting 6-day weeks with 3 units, and Steven Spielberg was doing a 2nd unit, and Richard Donner was 1st unit. And so my son Marco, who's now 39, would come on the weekends, and we'd all go swimming with all the kids during lunch. It was great. So much fun.
So cool to have that connection to old Hollywood and movies that you love. I was on a soundstage in Century City one time, and I was interviewing Nicolas Cage, and they had set up a nice little thing for us, and a couple of chairs and some lights. But Nicholas was late coming to the interview for whatever reason, and I'm talking to the crew guy, and he's like, yeah, over there they shot part of the original King Kong movie. Over there they did the burning of Atlanta. Just over there they did the You Can't Handle the Truth scene from A Few Good Men. And just all of a sudden, all of this history just started to come to life for me, sitting on that stage, being a lifelong movie fan. It really was something to be where it happened.
Yeah, and I mean, my movie fandom wasn't as acute as it is today, but now when I look back, because I was a Warner Brothers actor. I mean, I did a lot of movies for Warner. I was not a contract player. They no longer did that. But I was on stages. And now when you go back, they have plaques to tell you what movies were shot there. And when I first worked there, it was called the Burbank Studios. And Columbia Pictures, Columbia TV, it was a whole conglomerate of different studios that were using Burbank Studios. So my big first big job I ever had was doing the mini series of From Here to Eternity, based on the James Jones book, with Natalie Wood and Steve Railsback and William Devane, directed by Buzz Kulick, and the stage 7 where we shot the prostitute Mrs. Kipfer's whorehouse. When we did it could be a whorehouse. When they did it was a dance parlor.
That's right.
That was stage 7. That was Rick's Cafe, the interior of Rick's Cafe.
Wow.
So I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
Then, but I walked the streets and ate at the cafeteria that James Cagney and Claude Rains and Humphrey Bogart. And, geez, it's just the history of that. I'll tell you a great story. When I got From Here to Eternity, they still had a makeup and hair department. And so they needed to fit me for a hairpiece because I was only 25 years old, but I had a high forehead and I was losing my hair. And so they wanted to try some looks on me. So they took me into the makeup and hair, would take Polaroids to show the producer, director, the different looks. And out of this cardboard box, they took these old hair pieces that had papers pinned into them, and on those little yellow with age pieces of paper, it said Humphrey Bogart, Walter Brennan. So they were putting Humphrey Bogart and Walter Brennan hair pieces on me, probably from To Have and Have Not. And I thought, that's fantastic. And then they sent me to a place called Bob Roberts, a guy who made wigs on Robertson Avenue, or Robertson Boulevard in LA. And as I was walking up the courtyard, out walks Jimmy Stewart. He's got like a fishing cap on, and he's carrying a box. It's his hairpiece.
Oh.
And I said, Mr. Stewart, I'm a young actor. I just got a big job over at Warner Brothers. I'm getting fitted for my first hairpiece. He said, "Well, good for you, young man." He says, I didn't get fitted for mine until I was 38.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic story. Well, movies clearly have played, a huge role in your professional life. But before that, On the Waterfront was a movie that changed a lot of stuff for you before you had decided to become an actor, but it sort of pushed you in that direction. Is that right?
Well, yes. See, it was a big deal. I mean, the two main aspects of my growing up in Hoboken was, Frank Sinatra got out. Frank Sinatra grew up on Monroe Street. Monroe Street was where all the Italian immigrants were from. I'm a second generation Italian American. So my parents grew up knowing Sinatra, and my grandfather was the first Italian firefighter, and he got his pal Marty O'Brien, which was Frank Sinatra's father, another Italian on the fire department. So it was like how immigration works is you learn from the group before you.
Right.
You learn how, and Italians know how politics works from their own country, and so we all kind of assimilate into the fabric of the societal aspects, and so Sinatra got out. I was born in poverty, and like most poor people, your options are athletics, entertainment, sports, right? I just said that, or organized crime, and organized crime wasn't an option, but I was certainly around a lot of tough guys, so I certainly knew how to play that. But the idea of getting out, that show business provided an opportunity for me to get out. Like Hamilton says, get my shot. Politics never. I mean, I guess politics would be another way back then. Yeah. But that was the fascinating aspect. It was Frank Sinatra, Jimmy Roselli, and the fact that On the Waterfront was shot there
in Hoboken,
and that the Terry Malloy character was based on a guy named Tony Gustoso, who had the bakery, who actually they told part of his story. Years later, I got to know Bud Schulberg, and we had these conversations together. But that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And then so you have a dream, a young boy's dream, and you go after that dream, and then by luck and tenacity and blissful, youthful ignorance, not knowing how hard it's going to be, right. And then you wind up being lucky enough to fulfill that dream is just a miracle. I mean, I went to Hollywood in 1977 with my girlfriend. We worked double shifts in New York, weighing tables, cleaning apartments. We both got on that airplane with $1,500 each in our pocket. $1,500 cash, that and a dream.
Yep.
And now here I am. What is it, 70? I mean, 40 years later, a long time later. I can't even do the math.
Well, it's interesting when I look at the character that you play in From the Vine, and then I think about your life. I see a lot of parallels, and I see someone who went for success. When they got success, found, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be exactly. Right. And then at a certain point, made some decisions to change their life. And I'm thinking about you coming out and very publicly discussing substance issues and mental health issues, writing a book called Asylum. Your character took a different route to this, but I've read where you say that when you were thinking about the character, that you said to your director, well, I'm just going to make this kind of a documentary, because right. I think you saw the parallels as well.
Yeah, and also there was very little time
Mm.
from the time that I was cast in it. And, there was a very small window of time before we were going to shoot, and I totally identified with Marco in those respects, and I was going to, use that as a framework. But one of the things that was different between Marco's and Joey was that Marco didn't know that anything was wrong.
I think a movie like this, though, that is about rediscovering what's important in life, that is about loyalty, that's about doing the right thing, is a perfect tonic for what's going on in the world right now. And I think
and also it's also about somehow we were fed a load of propaganda that producing and making money and going to the right school and getting that right job, and then you'll be happy, which is bullshit. It's just it's not true. It's not true. And so Marco goes there, and his wife and daughter go to save him, protect him. They think he's gone crazy, and they're going to go there and grab him, and throw a net over him, and say, save their fortune. And they wind up discovering what he accidentally discovers. He doesn't go there with a plan. He doesn't even know how he got there. So it's beautiful. And just before we talked, it's beautiful that it turned out. It's a beautiful movie for the times. It's so intimate. You can see it with your family, 6 feet apart, with a nice glass of wine and some, salami and hors d'oeuvres. But I was just on the phone prior, and it's in the top 10 movie in Canada.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and it's a little movie, but people are watching it, and that makes me feel good, because these wonderful experiments, you can turn out to have a really good movie, but to get audiences to find it when you don't have a budget to promote and tell them to watch it. So yeah, it's so who knows, maybe if it's just very rewarding.
Well, I love that it is a leading role for you, which isn't something that you've done often in recent years. And I was reading about this, and I love this quote. You say that you have a 20-minute face.
I don't say it. Producers say it. Buyers have pigeonholed me because that's what they do. I got a great review from somebody in Canada who was surprised that I was, so good, because, character actor has become a bad word. Right. When I aspired to be a character actor, it meant that you did different characters. You didn't do the same thing. All good actors are character actors. We are taking on, Olivier with the nose and the walk, we're creating characters. That's what I wanted to do. But somehow character actor means bit player now.
Right.
And so when they see you do something and that, you can carry a movie, they're almost like, oh my God. Or they're so inundated with the 20-year cycle of the Sopranos that all they remember is that part that I worked on for, a couple of years. It wasn't, I did 24 episodes of The Sopranos, and they don't remember, The Fugitive or all the bad boy movies or all of these
Risky
movies.
Business and everything else.
Yeah. That's it. They go, oh yeah, he plays. So that's also interesting.
Well, this movie proves that you have a 90-minute face.
I got a 90-minute face. Thanks to you. Appreciate that.
We were talking about the character of Marco. We were talking about the idea that he was driven by success up until this time, that he has this epiphany. And I've got a quote here from you where you say success was your drug of choice for a long time. And in your book, Asylum, you talk about other struggles, the seven deadlies. There's food, vanity, shopping, shoplifting, sex, alcohol, prescription drugs, and success is the seventh one. How does it relate to the others? What's
So yeah, they're all symptoms. They're my seven deadly symptoms, and they're all symptomatic. I think success was number three. You know, I thought that if I could achieve that dream, if I could wind up being inside my mother's 14-inch black and white TV, like Frankie Sinatra, that this unconscious feeling that lived inside of me, which turns out to be childhood trauma, unresolved traumas, that feeling would go away, and also what they call being an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I think a lot of success, if you look at this current U.S. president, who's gone after everything, to prove that he's not as small as he feels. Yep. So I was going to show them, I was going to show everybody, all the kids that bullied me, and all the teachers that said I was an idiot, that I'd never amount to anything. So that this art form was my ticket to prove to them that I wasn't a piece of garbage. I'll show them. So, and I think a lot of brilliant artists, careers, politicians. I think that's the Achilles heel for most of us, is that the problem is the hole is so deep and so dark and so far down, and we just keep digging. So the gift is the conscious understanding, if you're lucky enough to realize that you have something that's broken that can be repaired, that can be treated. If you break your ankle, you don't, try to fix it yourself. You go see an expert.
I love how in the early part of your career, when you were doing plays in New York in a basement, you say, nobody cared about these plays. Nobody came. No, it didn't matter. And I love that you kind of embraced the failure of that, because that's how you learn, right? You fall down 6 times, you get up the 7th time. And that's what keeps us moving forward. And I think sometimes we forget about that, because we just get so caught up in the idea that everything has to work and everything's got to be perfect and everything has to be successful, that we forget about the importance of failure.
But the problem is that it's harder and harder to find those basements. Right. Everything is this big, everything is so instantaneous. But being free to fail, because we're gonna fail. And I never learned a thing from a success.
Yeah.
There's no value in it.
Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. What a pleasure to speak to you.
Same here. It was real fun to talk to you, and I hope I see you in person soon.
I hope so too, without a mask, and that we can actually we can have a face-to-face conversation.
You should, that little thing over there, you get that made as the teeth. You should get that made as a mask. That would be hysterical.
I know. That's stained glass, but I will. I'm going to start working on that after we hang up. That's a good idea.
All right. Well, send me a picture, will you?
Absolutely.
That was Joe Pantoliano. Find From the Vine wherever you legally download fine movies. My thanks to Joe for being generous with his time. Most of all, though, my thanks to you for watching. I'm Richard Krause. Stay safe, stay happy. We'll talk again soon.